Shawn, thank you so much for joining us again on Biz Mindz.
My pleasure.
It's awesome to have you on. I wanted to just mention a little bit about you for people that are listening and just give like a little quick bio on you. So Shawn Dill is an experienced entrepreneur. He's committed to empowering individuals and businesses with similar aspirations to achieve excellence. Shawn has a vast background in business expansion, marketing, and strategic development. He plays a pivotal role in driving business successful overall. With that said, Shawn is involved in a few companies and a few businesses. The specific chiropractic centers, Black Diamond Club, Book Yourself Solid, Protegra, Pringle Robotics, Riot Energy, Inherent, Hall of Goats, Cram, Speed, and Well Infused. And Shawn, my first question to you was, how many of these businesses can function without you in it?
Let's say all of them but two function without me in it.
Which two?
Black Diamond Club and Book Yourself Solid. Those are content-generated businesses that would require me. I guess now we could have AI-generated content, but that would require me to produce the content.
Yeah. And from those businesses, which ones can grow without you in them?
Well, all of them can grow. Well, I guess all of them can grow without me. I think that Black Diamond Club and Book Yourself Solid grow better with me, but they don't need me to grow.
Mm-hmm. Do you think all of them can grow without you in them? Like none of them need you to grow the actual businesses? Like are you the main person that's behind the growth of the businesses that you're involved in?
No. I think that I probably play more of a strategic advisor role in most. I love strategy, but it would be flawed for me to say that nobody else on the planet could provide strategy. They're all great companies. They do amazing things, and they have a huge trajectory and upside, all of them. A couple of them are probably more favorite kids than others, but yeah, they're all awesome.
What's your suggestion to someone that's asking how to be financially successful, that's just getting started or maybe already into their career but haven't found success yet financially? What would be your advice to somebody?
Basically, the sequence for financial success is, number one, you have to create cash flow. So we have to have a business that creates regular, predictable, sustainable cash flow. Sometimes entrepreneurs and business people jump into steps 2 and 3 and they don't really have step 1 down. And so step 1 is you have to have, your core business, what we would call the mothership. The core business has to be creating sustainable and predictable cash flow. The step number 2 is then you acquire assets. One of the things I love, believe Wheelwright CPA. He's not Guy Kawasaki. Who's Rich Dad Poor Dad? Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki CPA has Wheelwright has a series of books out where he explains that the function of expenses, the role of expenses is to create revenue. And so one thing that's difficult for a lot of people that are just starting out is that they have a mindset of, I need to cut back. I'm trying to cut expenses. You guys in your business probably hear that every now and then. Somebody says, look, I had to make a difficult decision to cut some expenses. But if you truly understand business in the way that business works. True expenses drive revenue. And so that's a very dangerous thing to say, because if I cut expenses, I'm cutting revenue. If I'm cutting superfluous expenses, nonsensical things, maybe we were drinking champagne every night after hours and I was putting that on the business, it's not actually an expense because it wasn't driving revenue, right? But then you have the acquisition of assets, and the purpose of assets is to create expenses. So we accumulate assets so that we can create expenses, and expenses create revenue. And now you're getting some insight into how, wealth works, right? So we have to be careful that we're actually accumulating true assets. Real estate is a great one. That's a great place to be. I'm super fascinated by cryptocurrency and the ability of that to be a very portable, appreciating asset. Probably some downsides from the tax side versus real estate. Real estate probably a better place to get started in. And then the last step number 3, is then the preservation of wealth. So as we become wealthy, then we acquire a whole host of other issues, such as financial planning, being smart with our investing, but then also there's tax implications. And then so that just opens up a whole ball of wax, which the more you know and the more wealth that you have that you can leverage, honestly, over time, you'll find that people are paying less and less tax. And so they're in that stage where they're leveraging knowledge and their assets in order to avoid, not in an illegal way, but to mitigate their tax liability, which ultimately is helping them to create more wealth because they have more money. Then they're able to either invest that into cash flow or into the acquisition of assets. I just want to go back real quick to, if you're just starting out, the number one investment that you can make is in yourself. And I think that oftentimes too, people super overlook that element. Investing in your own knowledge, investing in experience, investing in mentorship, coaching, basically short-circuiting the time continuum by talking to people that have already paid the dummy tax is what will help you to get there faster. I work with LaShawn Merritt, multiple-time gold medalist, 400 meters. If he and I were to run in a 400 meter race to this day, right now, he would beat me, right? By a lot. But if I had a bicycle and he was running, I gain an advantage. And the bicycle, what it does is it creates leverage. It's a tool that helps me to get to the destination faster. Now, if I was on a motorcycle and he was running, I win by a ton, right? And so I think that when we're running this race of business and life, we have to look out there in the world and say, like, hey, who's got bicycles? Who's got motorcycles? Who has cars? Who has airplanes? And I'm not talking about the thing, who has the tools that can help me to get there faster? I mean, the bottom line is every single person watching this podcast, regardless of where they are in their business, they're all going to make $1 million. The question is, how fast are they going to make that? Some people, it's going to take 20 years to make $1 million. Other people are going to do that in 2 months. And so the idea, in wealth management and wealth creation and wealth attraction is to attract as much as you can, as fast as you can. And sometimes the fast as you can part is overlooked. And of course, always doing so ethically and legally.
So a business has to be at the beginning stages of that business's life. It has to be very money driven.
No, money is a byproduct. I mean, I work mostly with service providers, so I would actually say that the business needs to be service driven. The people that I work with, I feel like, and this is not always the case, but I feel like we are paid in proportion to the level of problem that we solve. So if I solve a high level problem, and that's very important, if I can solve 3 people's super high level problem, I will be paid a lot of money by those 3 people. If I solve a very low level problem, I have to service several million of them. Is they're going to give me $1 or $2 because this is a low level problem? So I think that it really needs to be problem solving oriented, and that would be service oriented. And everyone should understand that we all get paid according to the level of problem that we solve.
Going back to what you said about some businesses, are running, some have a bicycle that they're on, some a motorcycle. Does the vehicle, meaning the business that you're in, how much does that matter? Are some businesses just have more hurdles along the way, depending on the industry, where you're putting that business. How much of that does it play a role in that success, in the success of the business?
I think it plays a role, and it plays an important role. I was even thinking like, well, look, if you're a teacher, you're probably not going to make $100 million, right? And you're solving a really big problem, right? And that industry has hurdles and stigmas and norms around it that I don't think there are people that would have an educated argument that they don't deserve $100 million, but the business of being an elementary school teacher, that doesn't set itself up for that. So there are some businesses that just don't set itself up for making whatever that high number is. And so there are limitations, ceilings that are set by a business. And I'll give you an example. Again, I work in the service realm. Let's say I'm a dentist, and a lot of dentists have never even given thought to what is the max amount of people that I could see in a day, and what are the limitations? Like, what causes that? One could be the number of people that my front desk can process through. The next might be the number of chairs that I have. So just by simply having a third chair, I might be able to see more. But another thing that people don't take into consideration, maybe I have 10 dental chairs and I could see 150 clients in a day, but I've got 2 parking spots. So where would, if I have 10 chairs and 2 spots, where everybody can't park? So a lot of us think that in that question, like, well, my business is the limitation, but sometimes there's other, it's called the theory of constraints. There's other constraints on our business that could easily be remedied and fixed that would allow us to go to the next level if we just were aware of them.
Yeah, we actually just experienced this. We went to an eye doctor here, and it's very well known. But when we got there, the appointment was really early, 8 o'clock. All the chairs in the waiting room, probably maybe 30, all filled, people standing around 8 o'clock in the morning. And when Cheyenne got checked, we waited an hour to get checked. And then when Cheyenne did get her eye checked by the doctor, we could hear the doctor outside of the room saying like, hey, we have to figure something out with the scheduling or hire somebody,
like
because
I'm 8 people.
because he's seeing like 8 people every 5 minutes or every 5 minutes he's seeing just a bunch of people. But I feel like that goes back to that, being aware of, okay, where's the restraint on the business and how can we add in a better system to flow, right? But sometimes it's very difficult when you're very inside of the business, right? Very tunnel vision. Gonzalo and I were talking a little bit in the car just randomly the other day, and I think you mentioned or I mentioned going into business, should people ask themselves, will this business outlive me? Like, there's certain businesses like real estate, right? Real estate is a business where, that building will outlive you, right? There's certain businesses that, because there's so much demand behind them, like Amazon, huge business, right? Of course, these are big businesses, but if you're doing, and not to knock any business or anything like that, but if you're doing, like, if you want to do, let's say, like designer jewelry or something, it's probably going to be really difficult, an uphill battle. Do you think people should go into, ask themselves that, and if, like, will this business outlive me? And if the answer is no, should they keep chasing that idea of business? Because I feel like business can burn people more than the success rate in business. What are your thoughts around that?
I think that most businesses should outlive the person. I think that every business should be attempted to be set up in a way that it can be sold. So rather than it just outliving you, why don't you have your exit before you die, right? Like, if I just could set it up to sell it, then someone else could take it over, and then maybe I brought it from point A to point B, I sell it to you, you might be able to take it, 5 levels higher than that. One of the difficult things too, just as an aside, is everybody always gets promoted to their highest level of incompetency. So I have to be acutely aware in the businesses that I'm a part of, and especially the businesses that I'm running, that there is an inherent level that I'm going to be able to take it to. And it might not be Amazon level, right? And I think everybody is like, oh yeah, of course, we can all do that. But that's not true. If I were really smart, I would take it to as high as I could take it to, and then I would sell it to someone who could take it to higher. And when I sold it, I wouldn't sell all of it, because if I believe that you could take my business up 10 notches, I would sell you 90%, and I would hold on to 10%. And then when you 10x our valuation, and then you sold it to somebody else, I'd win again, right? Like, so I think that's also important. Like, we all think that we're, Elon Musk or Bezos, but we're not. Right. And I don't even know, like, maybe they're lucky, or maybe they've got a good team. There's so many factors that go into it. So I think knowing that, listen, I'm here to take this to a certain level, and then I need to have created it in a way that I could sell it. Now, there are exceptions. What if I were a phenomenal guitarist, or I sang, or artist, and I painted? Well, there's not any real way to scale that. Like you mentioned, design, jewelry design, fashion design. It's not really a way to scale that, because that's my talent. But I think that inside of that, the race is to position myself. I have to create enough awareness so that I get paid based on the rarity of my talent, because it's not scalable. And if I'm not able to get there, then I probably should consider that maybe my talent isn't as rare as I thought. And, we have all these television shows where people go on and they sing, and obviously they thought they were really good. That's why they went on the show. And then they realize that they're mediocre at best. Well, then you realize, like, well, I don't have the talent to be able to scale this. I probably should find a different business that I can scale, or I'm just doing it because it's a passion, but I'm not like a 1 in 7 billion talent that should be paid accordingly.
Is that what defines a business as successful? When you create this machine that essentially doesn't need you in it? Inside of the labor, it's just flows. You have somebody in place that can make that business grow. Is that what makes a business successful? Because you got into you created the specific, right, chiropractic center, but then you started to duplicate that model. You franchised the model. Why did you do that? Was it to get a little bit more of your time back, and not be so heavily invested inside of the labor of being a service provider? Like, so many people go into business, but is there an overall success? Is there something? I know that people say success is different for everybody, but in business, how is a business measured by its success? Is it with the person that started it, still in it, still, functioning? We talked about a mutual friend that we have in common that owns a successful restaurant in town, and I asked him that question about, does it grow without you in it? And first I asked him, does it function without you in it? And he said, yes. That's why we're having a conversation right now, and everything's moving really nice. But then I asked him, does it grow without you in it?
And there was no sound.
And he thought about it, and he said, it does, but very slowly. So, and then I asked him, like, is that the point where you want to get to, Do you want to get to a point where this thing is, you put the right people in the right place, where it's growing, it's functioning? Is that what defines a business as successful?
Well, I agree with you that everybody's definition of success is different. But I would guess that using the criteria that you're using for the question, then that's obviously the goal. You don't want to, basically, it's like Pablo Escobar, where you're finding success, you're slowly building your own jail cell. Like, the more successful you get, the more tied you become to the business. That I cannot imagine is anybody's definition of success. Now, some people are just like, look, I just wanted to make enough money to send my kids to college. I didn't want all of that. I didn't want 15 people on staff to run it. And so for them, that might not be the definition of success. But I think for most people generally, that yes, that's what we are attempting to do. But one of the things too, I think is interesting is, there's 2 points. One is, and I believe we talked about this the first time that I was here, is that a lot of people feel like they're chasing freedom, but really what they're chasing is options. So if you wanted, what I want for my clients is I want them to have the option to be in the business or not. Some people love it. And some people, honestly, too, it's really scary. In healthcare, there's a lot of healthcare providers that hate it. So if I'm going to see a healthcare provider for something that's wrong with me, I don't want them to hate doing the thing that they do. My life depends on it, or you're going to fix my teeth or whatever. And you hate being here, but you have to because they built, and a lot of them are extremely successful. They've built these giant practices, but they're like, there's too many people. There's a headache. These people are complaining and the money is great, but I hate being here. Well, I don't want to be the client to that. And I would think the same thing in the food industry, anywhere. You want people that have the option so that they're working there because they love it, right? That's when the best service is provided. The other thing that is interesting is, 2 examples that we've used so far. It definitely is that I think that as you get around successful people, my next question would have been to both of them, to the doctor and to the restaurateur. Well, who do you pay to check your blind spots so that you don't end up like that, right? Because they're both extremely successful. And we all know that we have blind spots, and we talked about leverage. And so my question, because that's a really interesting thing. Like, who checks your blind spots to make sure that you haven't just arrived, that maybe this is what you do. You build the eye doctor's office to this point, and that's it. And which is great. If you're doing great and you got all these people and everybody standing, but maybe if somebody came and checked your blind spot, maybe there wouldn't be every waiting room chair full, and not because it's a bad thing, but because we're servicing them. And maybe we could even service them better, charge more, and make more revenue. Maybe the same thing in the restaurant space. Maybe even we could make the same money, but you could work half the days if you just hired somebody to check a blind spot. Maybe somebody's like, oh, that's easy. You just have to do this and this, and then it gets corrected. One of my biggest passions, and you guys have this advantage as well, is I love looking at what's working in one industry and then brainstorming how we apply it into other industries. You guys aren't old enough to remember, but we didn't always have drive-throughs at restaurants. But the drive-through concept originated in banks, not restaurants. So the banks created these little tubes, and they would have drive-through tellers. And then the restaurants were like, that's interesting. I wonder if we could apply that into our industry. There's a lot of things that are like that. Even if we looked at, if you took the restaurateur, they obviously understand flow. They're turning tables over. That same person could probably correct the problem in the eye doctor's office, right? Because they just have the knowledge, situational awareness. But who knows? Maybe the eye doctor's like, well, the reason why you have to be here every day and would grow slower is because you're not using, this and this and this on the marketing side, and I can teach you how we can scale that up, right? So it's, I think it really what it is about, one of my mentors who checks my blind spots, David Meltzer, always says the easiest way to get anywhere is to find somebody who is already where you want to be and ask them for directions.
The eye doctor needs to talk to Chick-fil-A. They got it covered.
They've got it figured out. Yeah.
As a business owner, does peace of mind correlate to how much money one is making?
No. So, and also too, you know what, that happens. Everybody thinks that initially, but when you have no money, you have to find. I remember when I hired my first coach, I had no money, and my first coach cost $4,000 a month, and I literally had no money, and I convinced Lacey somehow, like, this is smart. And actually, so that first coach was Michael Port, the author of Book Yourself Solid, who now last year, January 2023, I bought that company. So I didn't have enough money to even be a client. And then
how did you do it?
How did I do what? Buy the company or get the money?
How did you get the money?
Well, you mean, first of all people have money for the things they really want, right? So there's people that will literally look at you and say, like, I'm sorry, I can't hire you guys to run our digital marketing. And you're like, but you're wearing Louboutin shoes. Just the shoes alone would pay for our first month, right? So people just have priorities.
Yeah.
So I think that's step number one is you have to prioritize yourself and investing in yourself. And yeah, so I had to eat ramen noodles and, I had to, get money from other sources, but I didn't, when people say I have no money, there's very few people on the planet that have no money.
No money for that.
Yes, I have no money for that. Yeah. So I just had to figure out how to get money for that. And my theory was that if I got money for the first month and he was any good, he would teach me how to get the money for the second month. Right. And so then slowly I would
just take it day by day.
A self-sustaining endeavor. Correct.
Yeah.
And then I would get on the plus side. I think that's another thing. A lot of times young business owners are like, hey, so I hired you guys. You guys did my first month of digital marketing. I didn't get 508 clients. Where's my ROI? And we also have to learn that, there's seasons of sowing and there's seasons of harvest. And we have to understand how to prepare for and invest in the sowing season. And then also how to be prepared for the harvest season. Because I can't tell you how many people miss the harvest season because they're crying about how much money they spent and they're so negative and down and they're pointing fingers and blaming. And then opportunity comes and they fail to reap that. So I try to be really good at harvesting as well. But here's the thing. In the beginning, I needed $4,000. As you make $1 million, then you test 2 million and 4 million. And I love doing goals as doubles. It's another one. If I have a client that does $1 million in a year, and then I ask them like, what's your goal for next year? They always say like 1.3 million or something, and I'm like, well, how'd you come up with that? And they're like,
made it up.
I'm like, well, what a terrible goal. If you already know what it was like to do 1 million, then let's just do 2. Like we always play for doubles. It's a Patrick Bet-David concept as well. And then once you've done 2, then let's try and do 4. Then once we've done 4, let's do 8. But here's the thing, going from 2 to 4 million, that's not a $4,000 investment. So now you're trying to come up with $400,000 because you want to market on a national level. Now you want to hire, premier people to instruct you. Now you want it doesn't change like that stress level. If you're, if look at Elon Musk, what kind of stress do you think he went through when he was like, yeah, I'll buy Twitter. And then he didn't technically have the money for this. He's calling his billionaire friends, right? To like say, hey, can you front me some of this money? Because I'm going to buy Twitter. And people were probably like, his friends were probably like, why did you do that? Why did you even say that? Like, you're not even in the social media business. The stakes just go up. And I'm sure his blood pressure went up. And I'm sure he was stressed about it.
Yeah. And to touch a little bit about what you mentioned, I really like, and I've heard you say it a couple of times, that marketing is attention, not sales, right? And it's very interesting, right? Because somebody that we're currently working with, and she's awesome, great entrepreneur, and been involved with a lot of companies. She said the other day that the fortune is in the follow-up, and I really liked that saying, just because I think it's so true, right? I think there's a big disconnect sometimes with service providers or just any business owner in general. A lead is one thing, but then you have to nurture that lead and really work that lead. So I like that you said a good amount of times that, marketing is to draw attention and awareness, but it's not sales. And I think there's a big miscommunication there between business owners thinking that, I'm going to invest in anything marketing, and then all of a sudden my business is going to, skyrocket the next month. But if it were that easy, then everybody would go into business and just market, right? If it were that easy.
Yeah, people think that marketing gets them new clients. So marketing does not get you new clients. It just creates awareness, right? Marketing creates an awareness. Sales, you have to be really good at sales, gets you new clients. Most people also, and it would be fun. Maybe you guys could make a little reality show on this. It would be fun to come and run a digital agency for like a week, because most people also, I would say, if somebody came to me, I would say to them, before I start working with you, do you know what the value of a single lead is to your business? So if you're a med spa, a bakery, how much is one lead worth? And most people are going to say, I don't know. And I would say, and that's why we're in this situation, because you are only valuing the paying client. But before they were a client, they were a lead. And if every lead was worth $1, and I got you 1,500 leads, then we're at cost neutral, right? If I'm $1,500 a month. If every lead was worth $100, then I only have to get you 15 leads, right? And then we would be at cost neutral. But what they're doing is saying, but I didn't get the clients. But that's your job. Mm-hmm. You have to sell. And I'm assuming that your product is good enough to convert. I didn't tell you to make cronuts. Like that's what you decided to do.
Yeah.
But the other part of that I think is really important. People have to know the value of the lead. They have to understand that sales process and the jump, but they also have to understand, and for your guys, what you guys do, it's so critical as well, is that people make a subconscious decision to buy before they make the conscious decision to buy. I'm around people all the time because I'm a chiropractor by profession, where I say something, people ask me, I play a lot of golf, so they'll say like, what do you do? And I say, well, by profession, I'm a chiropractor. And a lot of people say to me, oh, thank God I don't need a chiropractor. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
We all need one.
We all need one, correct. But then they'll say that. But then they'll say something interesting like, oh, but do you know Mike Mert? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, like I know him. And then they say something like, well, if I ever had to go to a chiropractor, I'd go to that guy. Right. So what they're saying is subconsciously, they've already chosen him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's marketing. Mm-hmm. He hasn't sold them. They've subconsciously, you said, oh, there's this eye doctor, very well known. Well, what you said is that a lot of people in the community have already chosen him as their eye doctor, but they don't see him yet. Mm-hmm. If the eye doctor learned how to go into the community and convert, so that's different. So now we're in that transition between marketing and sales. So obviously the marketing's done if everybody knows of him, but now we have to convert them over. That's sales. And there's a fine line there between marketing and sales. And one of the things too that I see, totally unsolicited advice, is a lot of marketing companies, they're really good at creating leads for their clients, and then their clients are bad at sales. Yes. So then they try to solve the sales problem. And now we're going down a really bad road, because now I'm bad at sales. You're good at marketing. You got me leads. I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't have business. And you're like, well, let me teach you sales. Yeah, but I'm bad at sales. So guess what's going to happen? I'm going to be bad, and I'm going to get really mad at you. Because you're trying to teach me the thing. In that case, I would have to say, listen, you probably need to talk to somebody who's really good at sales, because we're really good at marketing and we obviously have that piece figured out, but you're missing this vital element. And so it's tough, because sales also has a stigma. Mm-hmm. People don't want to be good at sales. They think that that's bad. Also, I always point out, listen, you can get a degree in marketing from every reputable university. Most places you cannot get a degree in sales. You don't meet people that say, oh, I have a degree in sales. But a lot of people have degrees in marketing. So marketing, creating awareness, is on the front end because it's more widely accepted. It's more studied. Sales is equally an art, but people don't love to jump in and embrace that. People feel like you're being tricked versus being facilitated.
Right.
Do you think you're marketing all the time?
Yeah, we're marketing right now. Yeah, I mean, just as and I think that's critical for people. Like, I mean, even you guys run into this, right? People that are like, I don't like doing social media. Like, I don't like making content. And I'm like, but you're making content all the time. Like, if you went to Whole Foods, all we'd have to do is put a camera on you. There's your content. You're making content. You're talking to people. We're making content right now. So this can be a podcast, but it also can be content. So if you're breathing, you're marketing.
What do you think about companies that say, I've been in business 20, 30 years and I've never marketed. I've never had a website, done social media or anything. What would you say to a company?
Well, by definition, marketing creates awareness. So do you have any clients? Mm-hmm. So if you have clients, you've marketed. Because
they're doing really good in wherever they're located in that city. They do really good. They're probably
clearly word of mouth.
Yeah. If they have clients, that's the next question is, how did people know about you? Mm-hmm. Because marketing creates awareness. How did your existing clients become aware of you? Mm-hmm. Or maybe they would say by word of mouth. I'll say this. We recently held a sales event. We had Sam Taggart. He is the door-to-door sales trainer king. Like, he's the guy. And he made this statement. This was really fascinating to me. He asked in the room, he said, how many of you, we just picked on somebody and say, so Rodrigo, where do you get most of your clients? And the most popular answer in the room was word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And he said, isn't that terrible to think, though, that your entire business hinges on Vicky or whoever it is, right? Like, so if
true.
Vicky's not telling people about you, you have no business. Mm-hmm. And so in business, that was such a big revelation to me because we brag about that. Well, my business is all referral. And he was like, well, that sucks. Like, how crazy to think that your entire business hinges on these other people.
Talking about you.
You have zero control over it. You just hope that
depending all the time.
And depending on strangers. Mm-hmm. My business, my livelihood, my kids, everything just depends on strangers waking up and talking good about me. So wouldn't it be better if I could control the inflow of the leads, if I could control the sales, if I could control the revenue, and I wasn't word of mouth is great, but I can't be entirely dependent on my neighborhood saying nice things about me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like word of mouth is almost playing defense when you're doing, social media or just you're active on email, you're playing offense.
That's a good way to
all
look
the
at
time.
It. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what's one word? What's one word that you would use to describe business? If you can only use one word.
Well, I would use fun.
Fun?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Is it always fun?
What if, like...
What's a day in Shawn Dill's business?
Fun at what state? Was it fun for you the whole way through, from the beginning?
Yeah, there's tough parts. So, even... You think about a relationship, a marriage. Mm-hmm. Is it fun the whole way through? Mm-hmm. No, but like the way I would describe it is fun. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Like so there's little moments, there's minutes and moments where we pass through these times, and then, tough times never last. Mm-hmm. Tough people do. You just get through it. But that's one of my things. I love doing things like this. I travel a ton. We do tons of shows. We have our own show, and people always say that, like, you're always laughing, you're always smiling, because I want it to be fun. Like, what really is the point of it? And then that's how I don't love doing content, and I have people on my team that are like, Shawn, we need to make this sales letter. We need to make this piece of content or this ad. And I'm like, okay. And then you just make it fun. Like, another one of these quotes, Kyle Draper, who's in the social media on the content side, said this. He said, you know what? Like, a lot of people give me pushback, and he says, but I just care more about helping people than I care about looking stupid. For me, I think I care more about helping people than I care about getting stuck in any part that somebody's like, that's not fun, or that's depressing, or that's hard. Because when you're getting results for people, that's fun. Like, and you're being paid for it. Like, I always tell people, like, for whatever reason, I've had a clear vision since I was young, but I still, at my age, every day, I'm like, I can't believe, like, I get paid to do these things. It's really, it's wild. Like, it's almost like I'm like a professional athlete, but I've never had to leave the sport. Like, I get to play all day long, and people pay me for this, and this is great. So yeah, there's difficult times, but it's still overall fun.
Mm-hmm. When you were little, were you always self-aware of things? Like, you will pay attention. Were you one of those that will pay attention to how people talk? Or and I'm asking you because I'm a little bit like that. Like, I like to first see how people talk, and I see the energy, like, going back and forth, and I'm like absorbing everything. Were you someone like that when you were little?
Yeah, because I grew up in Okinawa, Japan, on a military base, and I was an only child. So I don't have brothers and sisters that, adapted me socially. What that does for an only child is then you have to have creativity, right? So you have your imaginary friends, and you play with action figures. Is you have to create that. And then also what I think that does is it makes you hyper observant. So I'm not outwardly extroverted. I definitely am more observing of the room, and then can kind of figure it where I can fit in, but definitely not the one that's just coming in and saying, all right, let me tell you guys what we're going to do today, or that's not my style. And yeah, I think that's a result. We're all shaped early on in life. I think most of our formation is before we're 6 years old of age. Our parents play a big role in that. Our environment plays a big role in that. And a lot of people just spend basically the rest of their lives trying to undo that, like, traumas that they have. And other people, I think, figure out how to leverage that experience to their advantage.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So, Rodrigo mentioned all the businesses that you have and that you own. Are you the kind of person that you open a business and then you just like focus 1,000% on that business, or you're always thinking about, okay, what am I going to do next? What other business am I going to open next? Are you that kind of person? Because you have several.
No, I don't think it's either one. I don't think that I definitely am not able to start something and then just focus solely on that, because other things require attention. I definitely am not thinking of the next thing, though. Most of the time, the next thing develops out of relationships, helping somebody. They're like, hey, I have this idea, or I have this concept. A couple of them, it's interesting, as you were going through there, there's a couple of them that aren't on the list. One of them is Queued Up. It's an app. I'm super pumped about Queued Up.
Music, right?
Yeah, it will just drop today.
I saw that.
It's a sharing app. So when you go to a party, like, there's a Bluetooth speaker, and then one person controls it because it's on their phone. Well, what Queued Up allows us to do is, if we all go on Queued Up, then we can put songs from our phone in the queue. And so if Rodrigo's like, hey, I don't want to hear this music, he can put his own music in the queue. And then and also there's a great use in golf, right? Because you have those Bluetooth speakers on the golf carts, and now the four of us can listen to, like, it's basically like the modern day jukebox.
It's
right?
just for music.
Just for music, yeah. So, but you can create a room.
That's so cool.
That is really cool.
You guys
actually
could be at home listening to your set, and then Lacey and I could be at home. Well, we're listening to the same cue. So I could put music in, and then you guys could be like, oh, Shawn, put that. It's awesome. Right? So I think it really makes that community side of music as well. So, the team over there worked super hard. The founders, Jackson Dietrich, and to get the Spotify integration, and now we'll start rolling out other music services. So then it won't even matter. Like, you have Apple Music, I have Spotify. It doesn't matter. We can still share music in the queue.
That's really cool.
So yeah, it's a super great
it's always
project.
so like annoying when we're somewhere and there's just one person, and then connect my phone, but then it takes forever to connect it.
Yes,
that's cool.
The other one is Everbowl, like the acai bowls. That's one that where the same thing. Like I think that the key to that is teams, right? You have to. I think it's more about building teams than building businesses. Because if you can get the business and build the right team around it, then they can carry that out. I mean, what do I know about a Spotify API? Like, I literally know nothing about that.
Is your role different in every business that you're involved in?
Yeah.
Or it is? Or do you have one similar trait in every business?
Two similar traits. One would be strategy. So I love, mapping strategy, and two is relationship capital, which is another thing that, being an introvert and an only child, that is a learned skill. I've been super blessed to meet amazing people. And we were talking earlier, I attribute a lot of that to social media, and then learning how to get into relationship with people. That's the part where I too, I'm like, man, this is really weird. Like the people that text me and communicate with me on a regular basis, it's interesting to see them.
Yeah. What does somebody need, and what are some characteristics that somebody has to have for you to partner with them or go into business with them?
I had a long time. So we said Robert Kiyosaki earlier, Guy Kawasaki. I heard him speak when I lived back in the Bay Area, and he was asked that question. And I love this answer. Unproven people in an unproven market with an unproven product or service. That's the formula. And that's everything that's ever been successful. That's the formula. So, Bezos at one time was like, hey, let's sell books on the internet. eBay. I wonder if we could create a platform where people will buy other people's junk. YouTube. I wonder if we just made an index of other people's random videos. Yeah. And literally at that time, the people that were doing it, they were unproven people. Nobody knew that people would want to watch your home videos, right? People are going to just take their phones and video themselves walking around. Yeah. And that people will love it. We didn't know that when they created YouTube. Even you look at Google, it's an index of websites. At a time, we don't need an index of websites. They're like, we make an index of websites. And who are you? So unproven people with an unproven product into an unproven market, that's pretty much the formula for a huge success.
For the business to check those boxes.
Yep.
What about the person? What if the business checks those boxes, or the idea checks those boxes, but that person doesn't check certain boxes to partner with them? What are those boxes?
Well, the biggest one is I call it givers and takers. So there's people that are in life, to see what they can get, and there are other people that are in life to see what they can leave behind, legacy. I would only work with people that understand giving, that understand that they have to put in first. You have to give before you get. The next piece is people that truly understand the value of relationships, human capital. That I think is absolutely critical. It's interesting because now in where I am now in life, almost all capital can be raised. Something that I would never have thought in the startup space. When you're starting up, that's the number one thing you need. I need money. But now you realize, man, if you have a good Rolodex and good relationships, there's all kinds of people that will put money in. They don't want to do the work, but they have the money to invest. I mean, in where we live here in Naples, there's plenty of that around. But it's really all over the place. The money is not the hardest thing. It's the work ethic. And so I'd say that's the last thing. We talked about this when I came here the last time. In fact, I think you might have just posted a clip of it. This idea that you're going to work 8 hours and then punch out, that doesn't work when we're trying to start something. We are going to intentionally get out of balance because we're going to go out of balance for our dream. Right. And so we can't be like, well, it's 8:30. I haven't had my coffee yet. It doesn't matter. We're chasing a dream, right? And we're going to be here until 8:30 tonight. And if we're eating pizza, that's what we're doing. And I need somebody that buys so much into their idea or the idea and the concept that they're willing to do that.
Do you think because you have that mindset and you practice that, the giving side of everything you do, pretty much, in business and just relationships in general, do you think are you spiritual? Do you believe in God?
Yeah. I do a show every Tuesday morning at, I think it's 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern on my Instagram at Dr. Shawn Dill with Pastor Brian Hall. It's a real interesting concept because Brian, his role in the world is he began to understand that the church was in and of itself a potential obstacle to a lot of successful people. Celebrities, athletes, entrepreneurs that couldn't carve out that Sunday time, but they could on Tuesday at 3:00. And so Brian is he's a pastor, but he counsels many entrepreneurs. Basically, what you're doing is you're getting on a call with him for an hour as he goes through basically a message with you on a one-to-one level. And then it also allows you to ask questions. What's interesting to me is beyond a shadow of a doubt, that is something that is becoming more and more mainstream in the last maybe 6 months, right? And it has zero to do with me. So don't twist this content on the internet. But we started to do this show, and maybe it's, this reticular activating system where now, like, I am seeing it all over the place. It is more and more common for people to talk about that. Or maybe it's just things are difficult out there in the world. That's when a lot of times people become more spiritual as well. Like if you're having financial difficulty or things are hard or relationship problems, that's when people all of a sudden become super spiritual. Maybe that's what's going on. But I definitely see a movement more towards at least an understanding that there is a God, or at least some sort of primary intelligence that's giving organization to this whole living experience that we're having.
Do you think because you practice giving, you receive a lot? And were you always aware, did you think to yourself, okay, before, let's say, having, I don't know, where your relationship is with, God and things of that sort, but it's an evolving relationship, I'm assuming, for everybody. So at the beginning, when were you always in business? Did you always have this mindset of relationship capital? How can I give? And as you practice it more and more, do you see that kind of triangle of you, God, giving, you keep receiving?
Well, and it's not even a belief. I think it's a law. So if I take my keys and I hold them and I say, I'm going to drop these keys, do you believe that they will hit the table? Right? That's not a belief. Like it's a law. Drop them, they fall, because it's a law of nature. The same thing with giving and receiving. It's a cyclical law of nature. You must give in order to receive. One of the things so I'll give you for this podcast, the controversial clip that we can chop up, is that a lot of times people say that you should give with no expectation of anything in return. And I don't believe that, because exactly what you're saying is that to me negates a belief in God. So if I'm giving and I have no expectation of anything in return, then I also am kind of saying I don't even know if there's a God. If there is a God and there are laws through which this God works and I am giving, I will also be rewarded. I will be taken care of. Now, where people get confused is if I say I'm giving to Cheyenne and Cheyenne didn't give back to me. I referred a client to Cheyenne and Cheyenne never referred a client to me. That's flawed. But if I sent 5 clients to Cheyenne, but I know by doing that, I'm going to receive, then 3 days later, some guy somewhere else on the golf course is like, hey man, I wanted to connect you with my friend that wants to hire you and pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars to mentor him. See, it doesn't come linearly, but it comes globally, because that's just how it works. And there's one more ingredient that is the gasoline that makes it go, and that's gratitude. So when I give, I have to exercise gratitude. And then I have to be preemptively gracious as I'm giving, as I'm letting this go, whatever it is. I could be giving you an apple pie that I made, and I'm so grateful that I can give you this apple pie, but I'm also grateful for whatever's coming. And it's not another apple pie, because what good would that do me? Like, I gave you an apple pie and I turned around and Joy was like, here's an apple pie. Like, well, now I have another one. Like, what? That doesn't help. She might provide in a different way for me, but if I'm ignorant to that because I'm not gracious, if I don't practice gratitude, then I can actually begin to repel that, because she'll say like, oh, I helped out Shawn. I offered him to wash his car while we were in doing the podcast, and he was just kind of seemed like he didn't care. Mm-hmm. She's not going to want to participate in anything with me because she's going to think I'm not grateful. Mm-hmm. I have to be the one that puts that together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Thank you so much. And then I have to say in my head, that must be because I gave Rodrigo the apple pie, right? Because, and now I'm motivated to do more of that. Like, let me get out there and give more, because the more I give, more cool things start happening to me. You start getting upgraded into first class. You get the best seat in the restaurant. Somebody just sends you champagne. They buy you, that's another one too, is that we all go out to eat and we're conditioned to reject and not be gracious. So if we're all having lunch together and then the bill comes and I'm like, hey guys, let me get it. What are you programmed to say?
No, let me get it.
And isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So we're like, we reject the gift. Meanwhile, you guys, have worked hard and poured into the community. And now all of a sudden, here I come at lunch to level the tab, to level the playing field for you. And you literally say, no, you reject it. So then what happens? Well, then universally, the universe is like, well, why keep giving to them?
So we're not rejecting anymore.
Nothing.
Yeah.
When that happened.
I remember I got used to not receiving because I was always literally we talk about this a lot. Like I was always giving, right? I was always the one that let me pay for it. Let me do this. Let me no, you don't have to bring anything, I'll take care of it. And you sent me a bottle. And believe it or not, that I still have that bottle in the box.
He never opened it.
I never opened it, and
I want to.
I wanted to tell you that story because we didn't have a chance to talk about it. It felt like it wasn't the bottle; it was just the action of receiving the bottle when I wasn't expecting it at all, and I was gonna open it. I remember my sister; she built her home, and I was gonna open it that same day. Like we went to the back of the home. And I was like, for some reason, I was like, no, I don't think it's the right time. So 6 months after, there was a fire in the States, and my sister's home got completely burned down. Now, it took a year for them to rebuild the home, and this is when I'm going to open the bottle. And like that bottle and that gesture just has a story. Now, and I always felt good by giving, but never giving, thinking about receiving, right? It was always, I don't know, it just felt good to always give, but I was receiving.
And you're still thinking about other people because he always said, I'm going to open the bottle when something good happens. And he could be thinking about himself when something good happens to us, but he's still thinking about, when something good happens to someone else. So you are still thinking.
Yeah, but you're part of the story. So I wanted to share that story.
Yeah.
With
Someone else you guys should have is Aaron and Kelly Nash on the show. They're up in Fort Myers, but they have a winery called Aaron Kelly. They have a collection of wine. And what I love about them is that their wine, it's a premium wine, so it's a little more expensive than just something you will buy on a daily basis. And one day he was explaining, he said the reason why is because these wines are celebration wines. They're meant to be opened on occasions, not that something you drink every day, and that you would write on the bottle with like a Sharpie what the occasion was, and then keep the bottle as a reminder of that. And that's really important, I think, even psychologically, as an anchor. But yes, you have to learn how to receive. And what's really interesting about that is that Lacey was listening to some content this morning on that, and I was literally thinking maybe I should do my next Black Diamond Club podcast on how to say yes, because there's so much on how to say no. Right? Like, you've got to learn how to say no. You've got to have boundaries. But I think that people also don't know how to say yes. Because if somebody just comes to you and they're like, hey man, I have Super Bowl tickets. Do you want to go? We'll go in my plane. That makes a lot of people uncomfortable. You're
yes.
Well, what's the catch? Like, versus being able to be like, let's do that. That sounds great. I mean, and we have to be aware that, well, that's just how the universe works. Like, I literally say to people, like, what did you expect? Like, if you didn't expect that, then of course the world's going to live up to your expectations. So I think also too, like, raising an expectation of like, we're going to go out and we're going to do tons of good. And then all kinds of like amazing things that go beyond dollars. all these amazing things are going to happen to us. People are going to invite us into scenarios. People are going to give us gifts. People are going to do things for our kids or our parents that we would never expect. But we also know that it's because we're doing this over here.
Yeah. And that has to be either a practice thing or a maturity thing, right?
Practice, I think. Listen, Dave Meltzer says it literally takes 3 seconds to say thank you.
Yeah.
And it's something that people just cannot do regularly. Even if you think about just creating a daily practice of saying thank you in the morning and at night. Just not even like to somebody, just being grateful in the morning and at night. Do you know how hard that is for people? Like some people can maybe do that for a day or two, but like if that becomes a thing where every morning you wake up and you're like, man, I'm just so grateful.
Yeah.
This is awesome. That's how you get into like fun. That's how you get into like, you just begin to realize like, I'm just so grateful. What are we doing today? Like, oh, we're going down, we're doing a podcast. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because you're grateful. And then tonight to recap and be like, that was so fun. I'm so grateful for those guys. I'm so glad that I met them, that you guys reached out randomly and then we, here we are connected. So to express that gratitude and then to say, and I wonder what else is coming from this, right? Like, I'm open to it, to be open-minded, which is one of the key things, right? Like I'm open to whatever happens because we are all pouring energies and resources into a relationship. Good stuff has to happen.
Right. What are the top 5 most important things in your life?
Top 5 most important things. Well, you brought up, I would say, my relationship with God. I would say my relationship with Lacey, my wife. The next I would say is providing service to the world. One of the things I think that the biggest thing that I stand for on 2 levels. So number 3 would be having people understand that health comes from within, not from pills, potions, and lotions on the outside. Number 4 would be having people understand that success comes from within, not from online courses, challenges, things like you have to clear the interference from inside, the same way with health. And then I'm going to put and make sure I say in number 2 with Lacey, I'm just going to call that family. And then number 5, I would say all of my other relationships beyond that. It's incredible. That's another thing that, people are so conscious about money. And like you asked me about starting up in money, and there's a lot of focus on money. But the greatest asset, because I talked about assets, the greatest asset that you can possess are relationships. So even if I went completely bankrupt this afternoon, I still have the relationships that would allow me to rebuild everything. And so that's why that has to be inside of, your priorities. Because a lot of people are trying to do this themselves. And those people, if they do lose everything, then it's over, right? Those people can never bounce back. But I mean, I would even be able to call you guys and be like, I think I know a little something about marketing. Could you guys just give me a job because I've lost everything? I even think that I could get my own clients if I worked for you guys. And so there's a lot of people that I could make that work with. I could ask them for jobs, help, influence, sell for them, market for them, all of that kind of thing. So relationship capital is the most valuable asset that we can possess.
Do you fear failure in business?
No. That's a great question. But so on one side, yes. I mean, I think that's a drive. But on the other side, I think, this guy, the influencer Manolo teaches golf. Have you seen him, Manolo?
Yes. Yeah.
I love watching him. And one of his things is, for most of us who do not get paid to golf professionally, we should just learn how to suck faster. And so the same thing in business, fail faster, because I don't know of anyone. I don't know of anybody. And I can't think of one single example of somebody who is successful but never failed. So if you understand that failure is part of the trajectory, then you should really actually try to fail faster, more quicker. Like take the risks. Like we're going to screw up the whole CRM. So let's screw it up today, not a year from now. We're going to get somebody's ad account closed down. So let's get their ad account closed down today, not 5 years from now. Like let's try and make the mistakes because we're not being so cautious that we won't do anything, let's just go ahead and be a little bit more aggressive, as long as we know every time we make a mistake, it's going to sting a little bit, but we're going to learn lessons faster. Right? And that's in the laws of Sanskrit. Life will give you lessons, and then that law is immediately followed by, and the lessons will repeat until you learn them. Yeah. And so I think it's like, hey, like, I want to learn the lessons, which are never pleasant, but I want to learn them fast. I want to fail faster, because that gets you to success faster. And I don't know anybody who's like, oh yeah, I just opened my business and we never had one single setback. Like, that doesn't happen. So let's have as many setbacks as we can, as quick as we can, so that we can move on as fast as we can and not repeat the errors.
Yeah. What is one conversation you wish you would have had with someone that you never had, or that you could have had sooner?
Well, that's an interesting one too. One was interesting because I played golf with a guy this past weekend. No, I'm sorry, on Wednesday. Played golf with a guy this Wednesday, and which literally was 2 days ago. And he was Japanese. And I was looking at him, I was like, gosh, he looks a lot like my grandfather. And I said, you're Japanese, right? And he's like, yeah. I said, it's weird because you look like my grandfather. And it's kind of weird because I feel like I'm playing golf with my grandfather, who I never ever played golf with, right? And so I think that earlier in my life, because I was an only child, I had cousins and aunts and uncles, and I didn't really appreciate the value of family, extended family, young. And so I would say all of those conversations, both of my grandparents who were alive when I was young, but that I never really developed a strong and deep relationship with. And so I think the conversations really now just are like, getting their memories, like, what was life like? What are things that you learned? Again, mentorship, wisdom, leverage, so that I don't have to repeat their life lessons, which I'm sure I have.
When you were younger, where did you picture yourself at the age you are now? And did you exceed those expectations?
3 things. I wanted to either be a professional soccer player, a professional musician playing saxophone, or a chiropractor. So I got one of the 3. And no, I think that it is not what I thought. It is a million times better. But I think that it's because, all of the things that we've talked about, I've allowed myself to not place limitations. I just my expectation for tomorrow, I think most people are just like, that's insane. But I mean, I'm open for somebody, seeing the podcast and asking me if we want to fly to Europe together. Like, I'm down for that. But I would not have dreamt these things if somebody. I did a test one time. Man, this was a long time ago, before social media was even huge. I was working in my chiropractic office, and I was like, man, I want to test this theory, but I really would love it if I could get some new AirPods. And that afternoon, a woman came in and was like, I saw your post on social media. My daughter works at Best Buy. So I asked her if she could get AirPods, and she did. And so here, and then handed them to me. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, because that's literally how the world works. But most days I'm not open to new AirPods. I just don't put it out there. And so most days I don't get new AirPods. So I began to just say, like, man, I have to be more open-minded, not to what I thought life would look like, but to everything beyond that.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I have, okay, so money, I feel like money always comes back around, but time is non-refundable. Every minute that passes is time off the clock that you can never get back. And with that said, and when it's all come, let's say, to a standstill, everything you're involved in, is approaching, let's say, the end of the road. What's a comment that you'd tell your future self, let's say 90-year-old Shawn?
What would I tell 90-year-old Shawn now? Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would tell 90-year-old Shawn. I don't know what that. I mean, 90-year-old Shawn could be living on Mars. I don't know.
Just with what you've already accomplished, what you're involved in, maybe having, what your vision is for, let's say, the next 30, 40 years, and then you get there, or you exceed those visions and plans that you have, what would you tell your 90-year-old self?
I guess I would say, I told you so. We knew it was going to go like that. I used to, when I was super young, I used to think that, and I guess like my premonition is that I will die young, but not because of like, sickness or something, because I honestly do, with well infused, I think that your generation is your average life expectancy is going to go probably into triple digits, right? Because of all of the advances in science and hopefully, modern medicine doesn't get in the way of all of the things that are happening that can allow us to really have longevity. But having said that, like, I just have no idea. Like, we just had those, Apple goggles.
Those are
like,
crazy.
Who knows what in 30 years we're going to be doing, what the currency will be, how we transact, how we move around the world. Are we going to other planets? Like, you just have no idea, like, what will be happening. And maybe I'll be a space pilot. I don't know. I'm open to it. And I think that, that's the main thing, is just like, it's so unpredictable. It exceeds what anybody is thinking it's going to be, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Anything you guys want to?
Shawn, can you buy happiness with money?
Well, technically no, but there's if you look on our podcast, Lacey and I were once on The Way of the Wolf with Jordan Belfort. He's been on our podcast, and Jordan says that he's been rich and he's been poor, and rich is way better. So can you buy happiness? No, but I think you should strive to be wealthy. And there's a lot, like we talked about, there's a lot of definitions of that. But I think that, even just the context of this podcast, when every day's a grind, when every day's a struggle, that's hard. It's hard to be happy when every single day is like that. I'm not saying there's not people like that. I have opportunity to travel the world, and the happiest people that I've met in the world don't have a lot of money. That's why the answer is no. Philippines, El Salvador, Mexico, people are just so happy, and they don't have a fraction of what the poorest people in Naples have, right? Like, they don't, and they're happy. So the answer truly is no. But if you could choose, I would want everybody to be abundantly wealthy, and have all of their needs met.
Yeah.
Why? You mentioned, people in other parts of the world, they're happy and they don't have, let's say they're not, wealthy. Why would you give that same advice to somebody that's happy but doesn't have a lot?
Yeah, because they also would like to have more.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing, is that they're not subjected to the external pressures of, what kind of car do you drive? They don't even have a car. Mm-hmm. They're not subjected to, when are you getting the iPhone 15? What do you have, an iPhone 4? Right? Like these little things that happen to us that are our culture and society in the United States is extremely materialistic. And so the values, and it's not a judgment on it, but the values in the United States are very different than people in the third world country. They just don't value, a fancy convertible car. It's not what what their value is. They value family. They value experience together. They value church. They value things that are very different. So they technically, they don't have money, but they're rich.
Yeah.
Right. So they have wealth because their values are different, right? They're happy. And that's the other thing. They're extremely gracious. Like we talked about, like we do these trips, every year. We go to a third world country and we provide chiropractic care. I can't believe how gracious people are. They'll sit in line for 3 hours to get a chiropractic adjustment and be so happy about it. And then you guys mentioned earlier, we went, early in the morning to the eye doctor, and there were 30 people there. And I'm not saying you were upset, but it's upsetting because you're like, what the heck? Like, what, this guy can't get his act together. And even the doctor's like, oh, we got to figure this out. Whereas, you go to a third world country and they wait 5 hours and they're happy. Mm-hmm. They're like, this is great. Thank you for finding time to see me. And it literally is, the value system is different. So if we adopted different values, then we would, and that's why it's so hard to answer like success questions.
Yeah.
Because the values are different. So if we adopt different values, then our definition of success changes.
And if you have great values,
No, it's funny because I liked your answer. And we had a conversation after 2 podcasts with Medea.
yeah.
And Joey was telling me you have to ask that question different, and I'm like, no, I want to keep asking the question the same way because everybody has different answers based on how they see everything, right? But it also we can talk about it like the whole podcast, like why I asked that question and the way I asked that question, right? Because it makes a lot of people think, and it makes a lot of people kind of like give us their view on things. But really, where my question is coming, like I think that money can buy happiness, but I think the opposite as well, right? So I think both things. So that's why I wanted to know what people think, because technically, as a fact, doesn't money allow you to buy experiences, to buy moments? So if those moments are giving you happiness, or you feel happy in certain moments, isn't technically money buying happiness?
Yeah.
Don't you think you can squeeze more out of life when, let's say you have good values, right? And then I would think the next step, at least in my mind, would be, let's try to shoot for financial success options. And I think the reason why is because of the experiences, right? But then you kind of go back, it's such a layered thing where you kind of go back and say, well, maybe that individual just doesn't want to have the experience, right? Maybe they don't want to go to a sales brunch. But then you've experienced it and you're like, yeah, but it's so, right? The way you value it, right? What's going on in that environment, you're like, man, I would love to bring, somebody who hasn't had this experience here so that they can see how people move, right? Like we have a friend that is used to fly the Gulfstream for Elite Jets, and he's like, and I had another friend who owned a car rental company, and I had a couple cars for a weekend, and the first thing I did, my friend that is a pilot for Elite Jets, he lives in the same community as we do. And the first thing I did was I was like, hey, I have the cars. I want you to check out the cars. And he started driving them around, right? And then the next thing, he's like, whenever you guys want, if there's empty leg flights, just come on the flight. And we went from Naples to Miami in 30 minutes. And it's such a life hack, right? But then I asked him, like, what's the cost for this? And he's like, it's like $10,000 just to go there for a 30-minute flight. But I feel like it's not so much putting values around that. It's just the life experience. It almost feels like you traveled through time. You lived faster, right? And that's why I think the money thing, sometimes we think like, man, how can we generate as much money as possible? Of course, with good values and giving, that way we can experience more and just get more out of life.
But worldviews, that's what's most important. Is then everybody views the world differently through a lens. And then that's what gives us our value system. And that's that, one of the things I think about too is like, so every one of us at this table sees the world differently. And we need to admit that in large part, the way that we see the world is programmed through social media. Because our social media feeds are different. So if you're seeing all these sales brunches and jets, you're like, wow, that looks great. But if Cheyenne's not seeing that and she's seeing people building wells and villages in Africa, then she's like, hey, we should some crazy stuff like that, actually. We should be involved in this. We should give away what we have and help people in Africa. And then Gonzalo's like, no, because it's the value system that also gets programmed.
What
That
about
is so true.
what about exposing that to people? Let's say you have the connections to expose certain things to the people around you, and the reason why they probably don't want it is because they haven't seen it.
Had the
right?
opportunity,
The
right?
opportunity. Like with the friend that we have, he owns this super nice restaurant, private club, right? And I asked him, I want to bring, my family so that we could, tour around, because he does a whole tour and everything. And he's like, yeah, of course. So the reason why I'm doing that is so that they can see something different. See what I've seen. It's probably not what I want, but it's just something different. It's like options, right? We talk about options all the time. But maybe at some point that's what they want. And the reason why they want it is because they have the opportunity to have someone in the family to, open that door for them.
Yeah,
So-
it's like food.
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys like sushi?
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of people don't,
Yeah.
and a lot of people haven't tried it and think they don't,
He's a
but
sushi
they've never
master.
been exposed to it.
Yeah,
My
it's
uncle's the
fun-
one that exposed me to sushi. I didn't like it, and I
it's funny.
insisted.
Yeah, it's funny you said sushi because we just try to make sushi.
Oh my god, it's so hard.
The hardest thing.
Yeah.
He's like, that's super easy.
And I said, I'll knock this out in 30 minutes. I'll be there in 30 minutes. As soon as I touch the rice, I'm like, how do they fold the rice so sticky? It was,
we all cooked in the family, and everybody had to bring something. And he's like, "I'm gonna bring sushi." He was the last one getting the last one going.
it was hard.
But it was good.
And maybe it makes me appreciate it more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things. Like, you have to experience it. After you experience it, you may like it. You also may not.
Right.
So if there's certain restaurants or places or flying private, to be exposed to it is great. If you're open-minded, say, I'll see what it's like.
Yeah.
And then you may or may not like it. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
You may say, like, I don't understand why someone would have a $3 million car.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we talked about that earlier. I don't value that at all. Like, I would be like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, my cars, I'm pick them based off how they look. Like, it's like a little kid. Like, that one looks cool. That's how I would pick the car. But other people value other things about it. But I'm open-minded to that. Like, I'm not against it. I don't think you're a bad person if you have a $3 million car. So it's just being open-minded to what's out there.
Yeah.
And then, creating your own opinion around that.
Yeah, that's what I think the main thing is, being open-minded. Sometimes people assume right away. Like, we'll have, family members that will say, oh yeah, this place on 5th. And they're like, oh no, but 5th, everything's... And I'm like, yeah, but I'm talking about the coffee shop on 5th. The coffee, it's not...
It's the same as Starbucks.
It's the same price. But sometimes, people aren't open-minded, and you just never know. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Or you have a friend, right? Like, you have a friend that so some people might judge, like, oh no, but I have a friend. Like, I get to do a ton of cool things. Not this year, I'm not going, but I go to the Masters. I was just at the Super Bowl. We were on Radio Row, and I always tell people, listen, when I say that, that's hard to share, because not because I'm famous, but because I have friends. My friends are like, hey, do you want to go to this Super Bowl party? Do you want to get on this? And so. And I'm open-minded to it. I'm like, yeah, sure. If you're just taking me to the Super Bowl party, let's go. Like, all right, who are we seeing? Oh, it's Mark Wahlberg's party. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And so people could judge that too and be like, oh, look at you, you're doing that. But also too, like, I like to bring other people. Like, and then that's where you get that same thing. Oh no, Las Vegas, I don't want to go to the Super Bowl. And why?
That's
Or the
crazy.
Masters, like, oh, it's too crazy or it's too expensive. Oh no, we have tickets. So if you want to just go along, then we can, like, it's just being open-minded to it. And then sometimes too, we're closed-minded or other people are closed-minded, just to even opportunity, not even the thing itself.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't want to eat sushi. I heard it's expensive. Like,
Yeah.
or I
Or
heard
you
it's
put
gross.
hurdles in your mind, I think.
Like, remember you didn't like mushrooms? Now you like mushrooms.
Based on your experience, what would you tell someone that wants to create content, get out there, but they're just not creating content because they're thinking what people are going to think about what they're creating.
Yeah, done is better than perfect, and care more about helping people than looking stupid. And you're already making content. So like, that's one of the things where people are like, well, I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Like, and I always tell them, like, no, you're not. Look at right now at this today, for all four of you, look at how many things you've done imperfectly. Like, so did you brush your teeth this morning? Was it perfect? If not, you'd still be sitting there, right? Like, I don't stop until it's perfect. Like, did you make breakfast? Did you make eggs? You made them perfectly. So we do so many things in our lives.
Not perfect.
Not perfect. So why can't content just be another one of the things that I needed to eat, so I made eggs? Were they perfect? No, but they were eggs and I ate them and that was good. I needed to make content because I had to share my message with the world. Was it perfect? No, but I shared it with the world. So I got it done and it served its purpose. That's it. And some people are going to say, you know, even some people probably ate your sushi and they were like, this isn't that good. Who cares? Right? You did it. Right?
And funny about that, I'm bragging because I was like, oh, this is going to be, I don't know if you've had the sushi at Ocean Prime, the dynamite roll.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is going to be exactly, and I'm saying it over. And then when I brought it, I felt so defeated. I'm like, it's not Ocean Prime, but it's a
It's Ocean Dime. No, but it was good. It was really good.
Do you guys have any other questions? I have one more question left.
Go ahead.
This is my last one.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I was asked this question and it left me thinking for weeks about coming up with an answer. So you don't have.
So I get a minute.
However you know, but maybe I just went in my own head too deep myself with this question. But if I knew you as well as you know yourself, what question should I ask you?
As well as I know myself. Gosh, that's a really good question, man. First of all, while I think on that, you know what I ask on our podcast, which is interesting, but it's too late. This was the last question, so you can't ask me this one. Is what are the top 3 things that you're concerned about? I love talking to successful people and entrepreneurs to see what they're worried about in the world, just in life in general. Gosh, I think that for me, lately, we touched on that. Where my focus has been is really on relationships, and I get asked a lot from people like about relationships. It's an interesting thing because people that truly know me, like like even on social media, like those aren't name drops. Like we have really, really real and deep and good relationships with some really interesting, eclectic mix of people that I would never have thought that I would have in my life. Like I just, even being open-minded to having them in my life. And because of that, super weird things happen. Not too long ago in the end of last year, I was in a UFC van with 4 UFC championship belt holders, and my good friend Michael Chandler and Tulsi Gabbard, who has now shown up on the short list to be nominated to be vice president with Donald Trump. I was sitting in this van wondering, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing in this van? And they were like, all right. And then the guy was like, no, one more. And they opened the door and Tulsi Gabbard jumped in and sat next to me. And I was like, oh, you're Tulsi Gabbard. Which is weird because there was all these fighters in the van. And I was like, and why is Tulsi Gabbard in the van? And I'm sure she was thinking like, and who's this guy? Why is he in the van? And the van drove us to Madison Square Garden and we went in. There was the UFC fights that evening. But then we all went our ways. And then I saw Tulsi again later that night. And then I was like, hey, Tulsi, I'm going to take a picture with us. And I want you to share it on your social media. And she was like, sure. And I was like, okay. So I shot it and I posted it and then she shared it. And when she did, I messaged her and I said, hey, Tulsi, like, I don't know much about you, but I see you're in politics a lot. Like, I'd love to know what you're interested in and what you have going on and how I can help. Which that's for me, like, most people would be like, how can I help? Right? Because that's literally, like, I want people to know, like, that's what I was saying. I can't help her. And she was like, well, I'm coming out with a book. And I was like, oh, perfect. Well, let's have you on my podcast, my little rinky-dink podcast, right? Let's have you on my podcast. And she was like, okay, cool. And then it like stopped. But then when Trump put out a short list of here are the candidates that I'm considering, and her name was on it, I messaged her again. I said, hey, I just saw your name is on the short list to be Donald Trump's vice president. If you are named to be the candidate for vice president, there is zero chance that you will ever come on my podcast. So we should have you on my podcast. And she wrote back. She said, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do your podcast. Who's your booking guy? Let's get in touch and I'll book it. And so she was just on our podcast for her book. And then after that, she messaged me again on social media because that was how we had talked. And then her assistant and our booking guy had talked. And then she said, hey, I don't have your phone number. Can I have your phone number? And I'm like, sure, this is my phone number. And then she texted me and she said, hey, this is Tulsi. I just want to make sure that you have my phone number. And I was like, wow, this person potentially could be the vice president of the United States. And they wanted to make sure that I had their phone number.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's super weird. But what it is the lessons that I've learned on how to navigate that, like to be one in the right place at the right time, 2, saying yes to opportunity, 3, leading with service, 4, then developing relationship that goes just beyond like whatever you're trying to get out of it. That is what has super helped me, accelerate our trajectory and growth over probably the last, probably 2 years. It's a recent thing. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's the question that I get asked a lot. That's one of the things that I think that I've kind of figured out how to do. I'm not here as much as you, but that's not even an excuse. You guys are really good at it as well. But I even find, like, for me, I've lived in Naples less time than I've lived in Indianapolis, but because of that trajectory, I have better quality connections and relationships in Indianapolis because I moved here later and apply these principles now versus, in Indianapolis where I just kind of keep to myself and play my golf and go on my way.
Yeah. I love that. And honestly, every conversation with you, I feel like we learned so much listening to you, and we appreciate your time a ton. Anything that you guys want to leave off with?
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to come here. I know you've been, everywhere, but you still take the time since day one. The first time we reached out, you came here. I thought, looking at your profiles and everything, I thought you were going to show up with a few people. You showed up by yourself, and I love that from people, and we're extremely happy to be friends and wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah. Thank you so much. If you're a business owner, you have to check Shawn out on digital, see what he's doing with the member-based group, Black Diamond Group Coaching now.
Yes.
Black Diamond Group Coaching. Yeah. It's honestly an amazing community to be part of, especially if you're a business owner. I feel like you will save a lot of years of learning in your business journey just by being part of that community. So go check that out. And Shawn, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shawn.